Hi, everybody. I am
Morning.
back. Sorry about that. I was having a little technical difficulty. But as I was saying before, when nobody could hear me, we are recording right from the start. So I just want to let you know that we do have a few attendees in the waiting room who are watching the meeting with us. We have Steve, we have David, we have Michael. So you are now good to go with your committee. Michael, whenever you would like to start, go right ahead.
Excellent. Let's get started. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Today's Tuesday, February 11th. Want to welcome everyone to the second meeting of the newly formed Safety and Security Committee. As everyone is aware, I think safety and security has been, a hot topic. I'm excited that we as a district have formalized the commitment here in terms of the ongoing funding, the partnership and coordination with the police department, key personnel hires. You guys will hear more about that today, as well as just the formation of this committee. So for those of you watching either live or in the recording, I wanted to just once again introduce committee members that will be joining each month from the Board of Ed. It's myself, David Felton, and Steve Ezis. Appreciate them actually taking the time to participate in these meetings every month. From the administration, Superintendent Lisa Barbiero, who can't be with us this morning, and beginning today, an exciting sort of step forward here. Our new director of safety and security, Jim Wiltsey. So more on him later. In addition, I think we'll have other key members of the administration, the Western PD, pop in when warranted. Today, we're also joined by our technology guru, Dan DeVito. So we appreciate that, as well as Captain Joe Michelli, so from the Western PD. One other comment just to open this up. I mentioned it last time, but just wanted to reiterate the goals of the committee, which are, of course, to promote the safety and security of the district, as well as to enhance transparency and communication with the Weston community wherever possible. There will be instances, as we discuss very sensitive topics, where we just can't delve into details. But rest assured, we'll try to share as much as we can going forward and keep the community informed of what is going on. With that, I think let's move on to the minutes from last month's meeting. I know, Steve, you couldn't make that meeting, so David, just you and I. Assuming you've had a chance to review the minutes, any questions or comments, David, on the minutes?
No.
Okay. If not, can I get a motion, I guess, to accept last month's meeting's minutes?
So moved.
Can I just second that, Jody? Do we need a second?
Yes, you can go ahead and second.
Okay, second that. Great. Discussion of safety and security topics. So announcements, I alluded to this before. Perhaps one of the most highly anticipated announcements, I think, for everyone here in the district is our new Director of Safety and Security, Jim, who joins us today. Jim comes from Fairfield, where he was a member of the Fairfield Police Department and led school security for Fairfield's 17 building school district. So we're very excited. He's a key member of this committee going forward, brings a wealth of experience. I think we're all very grateful and excited to learn more about him later in the meeting during our spotlight conversation. So Jim, welcome, and excited to work alongside you and hear from you on a pretty regular basis here during these meetings. In that spirit of, I think, open communication, just strengthening ties with those that are tasked with advancing the safety and security of our district. We've mentioned this before. We intend to hold 2 interactive forums or chats where the community will have a chance to meet with and interact with Jim, the new Director of Security, as I mentioned. Everyone will have a chance to ask him questions and share their thoughts. So we've scheduled 2 meetings, and we'll formalize this and get this out to the community in an announcement. But we want to try to accommodate everyone's schedules. So we have one scheduled in the morning and one in the evening. The first is going to be scheduled for Thursday, March 13th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. At the Weston Middle School Library. And then the second is going to be scheduled for Wednesday, March 26th from 9:30 to 11 a.m. in WIS's cafeteria. We're going to piggyback off the Hess-WIS PTO meeting for that one. So again, like I said, we'll send out a formal notice and encourage anyone who's interested to attend one or both of the meetings. As we move forward here, physical security and threat prevention. I think perhaps one of the most discussed topics of late has been this recent swatting incident at the high school that took place at the end of January. Look, we're grateful to have Captain Joe Michelli here to sort of recap the event, as well as maybe answer some questions that we've all had about the incident. So unless anyone has any comments to begin with here, Joe, would you mind just starting us off by saying the stage of, providing a brief recap of what happened at that event?
Surely. So about 10:30 in the morning that day, we received a phone call from the Weston, Massachusetts Police Department. They received a notice of an online bomb threat that they believe was directed at their school. Now, what's important to understand is that threat was like the perfect example of see something, say something. So there was a closed Instagram group. I believe it was the class of 2027, I want to say. They run a food drive and some other fundraising things. So they run a closed Instagram account. Somehow the perpetrator of this bomb threat got membership into that group and then had posted a series of bomb threats within that group. A student administrator of the group called, I believe, the principal of that school, who called the police department. They started their investigation. They ran the bomb dogs through their school, did their thing. While they were investigating, there was a teacher's name in the threat, and they recognized that they do not have a teacher by that name in their school district. They did a quick Google search, saw that we have a teacher of that name, and forwarded the threat to us. At that point, there was some, very specific threats in there, including a teacher's name. We dispatched all of our police resources to the scene and began doing a cursory search of the areas that the bomb threat targeted specifically, while also starting up, the local, we had 2 mutual aid bomb detection dogs, respond to the high school to assist there. So once we got that threat notification, we immediately obviously went to the school. We notified the principal, we notified the superintendent. We convened a command post in the school, started to dig a little deeper into the specifics of it. At that time, we decided it was in everybody's best interest to initiate our off-site evacuation protocol for the high school. In this scenario, it was to go to the middle school with the student body, including all staff and educators. We do have, that's one of several scenarios that we do have in our emergency plans. That's the one we chose to enact. The schools immediately got on that with the administration. In the meantime, we began crafting all of our public messaging. So all this is unfolding at the same time. All this decision matrix, the public communication, and it's important for people to understand with the public communication side of this, we wanted one message. We did not want a message from the police department, a message from the selectman's office, and a message from the schools. It was important that we had one message that covered all of the bases and got it out to the appropriate people. In disseminating the message, we leveraged all of our communications tools, school messenger. We used Everbridge on the town side. and our social media platforms as well. We tried to update as frequently as possible when any relevant information came out. And the communications were ongoing during the evacuation process. The student body and educators, like I said, were evacuated, and all accountability measures were put into play. So I have to say, I have to give a lot of credit to not only the school administrators and district administrators. The student body was amazing. They were calm. They took direction well. They listened to messaging. I wasn't in the site when they evacuated. I was in the command post, but my understanding is the student body was dialed in. They were focused. They were paying attention to direction. We were able to get them out of the building and off the campus within an hour, which includes activating the buses, because that's not during normal bus time. So all things considering, the school district itself did an amazing job of getting everybody out of the high school building into the middle school and off the campus fully accounted for. So I have to give them a lot of credit. This is something in our last site meeting, safety and security meeting that we had back, I believe it was in November, we actually talked about doing a tabletop exercise like this. So this is the first time we've actually physically moved the entire student population like that. And it was under duress, if you will. And everybody, like I said, the planning and execution of the plan was phenomenal. That said, while that was going on, we, from the police perspective, we had kind of an on-site command going on with the bomb sweep and everything else. The safety and security, we had a perimeter established. Our resources were focused on the high school and middle school area, and kind of the road in between the intermediate school and the high school, trying to control that. Part of our messaging was for parents not to show up at the schools, because one thing that we do know in all these critical incidents, every single after action review states that the influx of traffic bogs these scenes down. So if you look at images from Sandy Hook or 9/11 or any of these critical incidents, you'll see that passenger vehicles clog every route of entry. So we're able to maintain traffic for buses and emergency resources. So that's all going on while this is going. The important thing to note, we initiated a secure school from the beginning at the high school. It was not a full lockdown. That's a different threat matrix. We did secure school. We communicated that well. Principal communicated it well, and it worked. The threat was very specific to the high school. The whole district was not in jeopardy here. So being that everything was specific, being that we were trying to maintain traffic flow for emergency responders, as well as getting the buses and students off of the campus, we kept normal operations throughout the rest of the district, including even in the middle school. They were secured for a while we brought the new student population in, but their day went on throughout the day. They didn't dismiss. So part of the decision matrix, if you will, is you don't want to raise more panic and alarm than necessary. And when you're looking at the younger student bodies and populations, that's a much different psychological impact if all of a sudden you're going into lockdown and you're evacuating. If it's necessary, it's absolutely the right decision. It was not necessary in this case, and we went with the business as usual model. While that was going on, we immediately had Detective McGowan. He went over he started with us at the school. We gathered as much information as we could from the Instagram page and other information from the Western Massachusetts Police Department. He went to the TIU lab and immediately began working the investigative side of this to try to determine a suspect in this. And he did a phenomenal job. Unfortunately, it took several hours for our exigent requests to be filled by Meta. But once we got those requests in, by that evening, we had identified the suspect, who in fact was the suspect who ultimately had criminal charges in Massachusetts placed against him. We had everything. We had his name, we had his phone number, we had his address, his parents' names. Everything was delivered to the FBI and to the Weston, Massachusetts Police Department that evening. So, you know, in less than 2 hours, we had the high school building evacuated. We had students transported home, accountability measures, and the bomb detecting canines swept the building and facilities, the bleachers outside and everything else. And we got the all clear prior to 12:30 in the afternoon.
So, excuse me. I don't know if David or Steve, you guys have any questions. I know we've gotten a couple questions from parents that I can jump in with, but David, Steve, I don't know if you have anything to start us off.
No, I have a couple of quick questions. Number one, I've received feedback as well that the communication was bar none. It was perfect. And I think it's an area where we have been criticized. So I think that from a communications perspective, both from the police department, from the superintendent, I think that we did really, really well from the get-go. So I think that's worth mentioning because it's an area that we're often criticized. So thank you for that. My quick question is, are the parents, the kids, to act as a deterrent, are they, I understand that the child could be criminally charged, but do they have to reimburse us for any expenses that we incurred? Like, what mechanisms are in place? I always say kids do dumb things, right? And we don't want to harm a child for life because of something he did that was stupid, especially middle school, but at high school. So what kind of deterrents are in place, such as, do we get reimbursement for expenses incurred? Like, where does this actually go?
This one's a little unique because the threat originated from Massachusetts. So that student is juvenile. He's being handled in the juvenile justice system. I believe the charges, if I read them properly, from the Weston Mass police report, there was a felony charge in there. So I mean, that is from a deterrent factor. Getting a felony charge while you're still in high school is definitely a major detractor there. As far as restitution or anything like that, I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly how that would be handled. It's rare these cases even get solved. So the fact that we were able to generate a suspect and drive it to arrest, we worked for 5 days with that police department to make sure they were going ahead with charges. So,
and do we message out, or will there be a plan to message out maybe just the fact that the child, if we publish at least the age and that they were charged criminally with a felony? My intent is that we want these things to be deterrents, right? Like I said, right. Kids do things that are not always well thought out. But if sometimes, so do you know from the police department's perspective if there's an intent as far as, like, it seems like from a district's perspective, the matter is closed, right? Is there going to be a message coming out from the police department, maybe from Jim or the Board of Ed, the superintendent's office, just kind of saying, this is essentially where it's at. The child has been charged criminally with a felony, and the real takeaway here is talk to your kids, right? Because I'm sure this kid didn't intend to have happened what happened, and certainly probably now in the rearview mirror is saying, geez, this was stupid.
I actually did include that in some of the messaging that I sent out. One was, it's important to have these discussions with your children because, these decisions do have severe consequences. I don't know what they're going to release as far as what the actual charge. They submitted everything for review. And again, I don't know fully how juvenile justice works in Massachusetts, but I did put in there that the person was charged, juvenile suspect and all that in the communication.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe, can I ask, so the notice went out that this was going out. Did we find parents coming to school regardless, either to the high school or the 3 other schools when they became aware of it?
We did have a few. It wasn't the norm. For the most part, I think people heeded our warnings. And, you know, that's something we can continue to communicate going forward. I mean, that's really an important aspect to this whole thing. You know, we've developed some of the other egress points on campus. We do have other layers in place to control School Road. If we did have a different, you know, different type of threat where we had to completely close that down. But what we don't want, you know, and we have, not to get into the weeds, if you will, for the, you know, response aspect of this, but we do have control measures in place to establish perimeters and everything else. But getting that compliance from the parents, especially in this, you know, previous case here, was very important. And it's certainly something messaging going forward we can hope to drive home some more, because successful outcomes are determined by the ability for the appropriate people to get on campus and off campus. And if we restrict that, if we bottleneck it, we're going to have a real problem.
Yeah, thanks.
Joe, you mentioned this before in terms of, look, not wanting to, I guess, raise more alarm than necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I did get a number of questions just about, you talked about sort of this decision matrix as to what you're doing with respect to locking down a school versus the campus. And I know there were a couple of questions from parents that I received, that we all received, just about just a show of police presence and force. And so it seemed to some as though, you know, there was police presence, let's say, at the upper two schools, the lower two schools, and even the entrance, let's say, to School Road. It didn't look like there was, let's say, beefed up security or police presence. So to the extent that you can talk about that, and it may get into tactics and you may not be able to discuss it in detail, but to the extent that you can you just elaborate on sort of how you guys decide whether or not you're locking down the campus versus a school? And then just on the show of sort of police presence or force, you know, how does that sort of, you know, how do you guys take that into account when a threat like this occurs? Because again, I could see from some parents' perspective, hey, there's a threat made against one school, but then, you know, if we're not showing presence at other schools, is there a vulnerability there? So I guess just if you could address that, that'd be great.
It's all relative, right? So I think it's, none of these are canned responses, if you will. They're every single one of them is different. Every response is scalable. So, you know, we may call mutual aid and staff way up and then bring it back down. Everything's a little bit different. In this one, we had very specific information towards the threat. And you know, another thing that's important to recognize in the decision making here is, unfortunately, these types of threats have become the norm. Not only, you know, regionally, they're across the country, and not one of them has shown an actual device and or going off or anything like that. So while we're working in an abundance of caution, in this particular case, we had a teacher's name, we had specific locations. You know, if it came in as, you know, we're going to blow up a school on School Road, or we're going to blow up one of the Weston schools, then that's a much different approach where we would have, you know, secured all the buildings and everything else. You know, we can't necessarily deplete the regional assets and mutual aid partners from their own communities, because the same thing could be kicking off in their town and everything else. There is copycats and there are other things. So we put a lot into these decisions, and while we certainly don't want to underreact, we also don't want to overreact. And you know, I think in hindsight here, when you look at what we did, I feel that the school district and police department and, you know, we had emergency response, we had fire and EMS staged at headquarters. This way, you know, somebody gets injured in the evacuation or whatever, we had all the resources we needed ready in town. It just wasn't necessarily on the campus. So, you know, projecting calm where calm should be is important as well. If we started doing that, that's going to trickle down, and then you're going to have more people responding to the campus and wanting to get their kids out of the elementary school and the intermediate school, and that's going to impact negatively our ability to appropriately respond to the high school and direct the resources we needed there. So our primary focus was we were moving the entire building population of the high school, and we wanted to make sure that all of our resources were committed to protecting that group of people beyond just the suite. So going building to building, they're somewhat exposed, and having our law enforcement presence there, because you don't know if somebody's throwing a bomb threat and then there's a secondary threat, right? So somebody could be planning something else. We'll wait for you to evacuate and we'll do whatever it is to harm people. So our focus is that. And it was like I said, it was very specific, this threat. So that's all part of the decision. And, the schools have security in place. They have the radios, they have alertus, they have everything. The buildings are locked from the outside in. We felt confident that we weren't overreacting in other places, and we had the resources committed appropriately to where they needed to be.
Well, and I think there are resources too at some of those, at some of the lower schools, right, in terms of security specialists. I think the question for people was, well, if this was directed in one area, and then it potentially leaves other areas vulnerable, but you're saying, look, there was security there anyway at those lower two schools, and that you had to focus on the direct threat, while of course keeping assets flexible so that of course they were available for the lower two schools. I think again, the questions that I was just getting was, well, could we have had someone, let's say, positioned outside those schools at least to show, to provide some sort of show of force. But I think this is all good to discuss, and sort of I'd love to hear just takeaways, and when Jim gets sort of up to speed here, sort of have his view on sort of a myriad of how he would approach like things like this. One last question for me just on this, and we'll move on. We had a couple other questions just about resources, right? So, and you mentioned this, Joe, before as well. So, were there other resources? Is there an ability, if we had to draw on other resources from surrounding towns? I think you said there is, but you wouldn't necessarily want to go to that sort of, to begin with, just because you're drawing from other towns' resources, and again, elevating the risk beyond, what it is. But I did hear there were other municipalities that did participate in this. I think that's part of it. So if you could address sort of that, drawing from other municipalities as well as the participation of other municipalities in this incident. And then secondly, just on the crime lab, I know we have resources through the crime lab. Do those resources from the crime lab, let's say, factor in to an incident like this in any way, or not?
Oh, absolutely. So we had, important to note, we had 9 Weston police officers on the campus when this went off. 9 of us. We're a 17-member department. So that's a pretty robust response from our own. We do plan for flexibility. We were prepared to cover anything necessary at the other buildings if something went off. Anytime there are officers from the other municipalities working at the TIU, the lab there, they're 100% available to us and committed to assisting anything we have, especially on the campus. We had years ago, we had a home invasion in town, and we had a couple officers working in the lab at the time, and they were out with us on our first response, going, doing the neighborhood searches and everything, and help us apprehend the people that did the home invasion. We actually caught them. So those resources are there. We have a lot of pre-designated response resources and plans in place for law enforcement, for fire, for EMS. And I'm not going to get into the weeds on that stuff, but we have mechanisms where we call pre-designated numbers of resources with certain plans, and we will get the mutual aid response immediately from the communities that we need. So it wasn't that nobody was available. It's just a decision-making protocol for incident response. So we evaluated the situation, and we staffed up accordingly, and we put the resources on the ground that we felt were appropriate. And at the end of the day, I know, hindsight's always 20/20, or, people looking in from the outside of different ideas and whatever else. But I think the proof is in the pudding here. I think the way this went off, the communications from early onset, the activation of the school emergency operations plan by the principals and district administrators, superintendent. I mean, it was one cohesive team. We got a large population of people moved and accounted for without any secondary issues. We didn't have any injuries, people getting trampled or anything like that. It was very orderly. It was very contained, and the students in the other buildings weren't traumatized by what we did. So I think when you look at the whole picture here, I think it was handled appropriately. And I hope, going forward, people can recognize that and understand that this really is one big partnership here. And we're all committed to the safety of the students, educators, and staff on the campus. And we're going to make the best decisions to ensure, not only the physical safety, but the mental well-being too of everybody on that campus. There's a lot that goes into these decisions. I feel good that not just the police department, but the schools and everybody else made the right calls and executed the plan properly.
No, look, I of course, look, I'll speak for many others. I appreciate the effort. It felt like it did go off pretty well. Again, there were some questions, but of course, there are all of these details that get factored into an incident like this. So I just want to say again, just thank you to you and the police department and the security specialists, of course, on campus. This has been a very sensitive topic for people. So we appreciate that all you're doing, and just know that any of these questions are not criticisms. They're just people are interested in sort of, how the decision-making process is made from the police department. And I know you can't share everything, but I think the better informed everyone else is, the more confidence everyone has in the response. So thanks for that.
And we go to a fair amount of training. We go to meetings. We get briefings and bulletins on these types of incidents that happen around the country, and best practices and all that stuff. So we're applying everything we're learning. And like I said, this is one cohesive team between your emergency first responders and the school district, and I feel good about the safety and security of that school district and those students and administrators and educators.
No, that's great. No, I appreciate it. All right. Unless anyone has any other questions, maybe we can move on. All right. Let's move on to the portable alert system rollout here. So last meeting, Dan DeVito, who's joining us today as well, discussed, I think, the initial rollout of the portable alert system, which we call Quick Links. At that point, I believe, Dan, there were approximately, I think there were like 100 links or something along those lines provided to the staff across the district in let's call it the first phase of the rollout. So Dan's back this month to give us an update on how phase one rollout has been. And then, of course, to discuss sort of phase two as we ramp up, I think, the distribution of those links to to additional administration and staff on campus. Dan?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mike. So right now we have about 120 of the new quick alerts rolled out. We have a few more to hand out based on, just staff absences and stuff that I'll be handing out later on this week. And we've been in really the testing phase. I've been checking the system on the back end to make sure that everything's been connecting properly. We've been monitoring like battery life so we can get a good handle on how long it takes to charge them, how long a charge lasts for. And so far, everything's been good. We've gotten some good feedback. Most of the tests have been positive and successful in the areas of need we're working on right now. And so we are pretty much at the next step, which is to purchase the remaining quick alerts for the rest of the staff of the district. So Jim and I are going to catch up this week, and we're going to discuss like the proper procedure for a full rollout to all staff, because you're looking at another 300 ones that we're probably going to have to purchase, and how we can efficiently do that. We're going to get the purchase order in, and then hopefully we'll have a quicker ETA than the last time we got the first batch of the quick alerts.
Two questions on this for me, and I'll open it up. The first is just on the timing
Yep.
of, let's say, this phase 2.
Yep.
Are you thinking that you're going to put, you and Jim will catch up this week? Are you thinking you'll get the order out, you'll roll this out? Are you thinking by April we'll have a full rollout of the quick links? Again, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver here, but just curious from your perspective.
Sure. The goal is, we'll hopefully have the order in by the end of the week. And I would like to get them fully rolled out before April, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm hoping to get them, part of it really depends on the shipping. A lot of, it seems like a lot of school districts nationally are interested in this type of a solution. So with the increase in demand, then increases how long it takes for us to receive them. I think the company is now kind of realized that after a few months of things being held while they were waiting on their own shipments for the product. So I really would like to get them fully rolled out before April, to be honest, but hopefully I'll have more information. It really just depends on the shipping, right? If it's like, hey, we can't ship these out for a month, then yeah, we're going to be closer to April. But if they can ship them out in like a week or two, then the goal is to get it done before that.
And then one last question for me. We talked about this last meeting, and I was wondering, and I had some questions on this too,
Sure.
Which is if a school staff member takes the quick link home,
Yep.
and then forgets it at home, and then comes in the next day, do they not have one that day? Do they get issued a temporary one for the day that they hand back at the end of the day? How does that work? Because I could see it both ways in that if you don't give them one, then they're of course devoid of a quick link, and should they be put in a position where they need it, now they don't have it, so it sort of defeats the purpose. On the other hand, how many extras do we have? And are you giving these out, and how are you tracking them, et cetera, et cetera? So I guess from your perspective, give me the pro and the con to how you're thinking about doing addressing that.
Sure, and those are great questions. They're questions that we've been discussing internally. Part of the rollout process is when we've been giving them to staff, they were asking like, hey, where should we put this? Where should we attach it? And we always say attach it to your ID badge, because they need their badge to get into the schools. So they're not going to forget their badge. We say we don't even recommend putting it on their car keys, because for whatever reason, you're always going to have your badge on you, right? So that the hope for that, and everybody's done that as I've rolled them out, they've immediately just attached it right to their lanyard. And we bought some extra clips to make sure that it clips onto their lanyards without any issue. But from if they forget it at home for whatever reason, that's going to be a procedural discussion that we're going to have. That's a larger discussion, because there's work that is done on the back end in terms of how you activate these quick alerts and how you assign the quick alerts to individual staff members. So, it's not at face value, it's not easy having like a temporary quick alert that can set up that you can just dole out to people. And we would need to put some kind of a procedure in place. That's why I was saying it's a larger conversation, because if we hand out a temporary one for somebody, which is a perfectly acceptable solution in the event that somebody forgets it, but then we have to now follow up and make sure that it's returned at the end of the day, put back into the pile, and their older one is reassigned to them. So as you can tell, there's a lot of processes that we have to pin down. And so now that Jim is officially here, and I thank you, Jim, for being patient with me, because I've kind of been attacking him with all these questions that I've had. It's like, oh, welcome, let's talk about this. So I didn't, I think now that he's been, here for a week, now we can have more of these conversations, these procedural conversations as to what should we do in the event of. So hopefully we'll have more information as to what we'll do for that for the next meeting.
Great. Any questions from anyone just about this, or we can move on? Okay. Dan, we'll stick with you on the cybersecurity and the PowerSchool incident. I know there was an update. You joined us last month again, talked to us about just what initially happened. There was a breach. It not only impacted our district, it impacted districts across the country that use PowerSchool. Okay. I think there were updates as of late, and I think a bit of good news as well in terms of what data was actually available during the breach. So if you can just give us an update there, that'd be great.
Sure. So we did confirm Social Security numbers were never hosted in PowerSchool servers. So staff and student Social Security numbers were not compromised. Basically, what was compromised was PII, or personally identifiable information, first name, last name, potentially cell phone numbers and addresses. And PowerSchool's response, and I sent out an email a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, last week actually, that basically said, here's what PowerSchool is doing. So PowerSchool has teamed up with Experian, and they're going to be providing free, let me read exactly. So it's complimentary identity protection services for all current and former students and educators, as well as 2 years of complimentary credit monitoring services for all adult students and all educators involved. So in the email, it's a link. PowerSchool/Experian is going to be reaching out to all families and educators directly. That's why I wanted to stress in the letter, please keep a lookout for it. It's not going to be coming from Weston Public Schools. PowerSchool is taking care of that directly themselves. There's also a link to their updated cybersecurity incident update, which they do update as needed. So over the next couple of weeks, hopefully people will be getting more information directly from PowerSchool and Experian regarding setting up the identity protection and the credit monitoring services. I highly recommend to everybody to sign up for it. If you're notified for it, sign up for it. I think at this point, there's been so many breaches in the world. I've had like free credit monitoring from every company for like the past 10 years because I'm always notified whether it was a Target breach that happened a couple of years ago or whatever. So I would definitely recommend, signing up for it. It's free. It only takes a few seconds, and PowerSchool is taking care of all that communication. One of the things I'm waiting on from PowerSchool is, hey, what is the exact email address this is coming from? Because I would like to notify everybody, keep an eye on whatever, cybersecurity@powerschool.com or whatever it's going to be. That way people don't automatically think this is junk mail. I'm not even going to pay attention to it. So as soon as I get that information from them, I will send another message out to families with just a quick heads up about that. So one good thing, no Social Security numbers were taken, and now they're going to be doing credit monitoring for us.
Awesome. Great. Any questions on this? David, Steve? No? Okay. All right, great. Dan, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on here to, I think, look, I've mentioned this before. One of the goals of the committee here is to continue just to strengthen the relationship between the community and the security professionals here, in the district. And I'll say, look, we have a very special guest today, key stakeholder, of course, for our spotlight here, who is our new Director of Safety and Security, Jim, who, as many of you know, I think, and has been mentioned before, just started his tenure here in Weston just last week. So he's been here for a hot second, but wanted to welcome Jim here. And look, I speak for many, if not all, that, look, we're very excited to have you have joined the community, and we're looking forward to getting to know you a bit more. So thanks so much, Jim. I thought we'd kick off I think everyone wants to learn just a little bit more about you, Jim. If you can give us just a high level, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. I know that, look, you have a lot of experience. There was the Marines, there was the police department, you worked in Fairfield. If you can give us just a little bit more detail around that, I think people would love to hear about your background and sort of, your experiences as you joined Weston today.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is day 5, I think. We had a snow day. It's been a great first week. So yeah, I'm did 25 years with the town of Fairfield. My last 4 years, I was a lieutenant in charge of the school safety division. And like you mentioned earlier, we had 10,000 kids, 17 schools, and I had 7 SROs that were direct reports to me. Prior to Fairfield, I was in the Marine Corps active duty for 4 years. And last year, a little over a year ago, I just got my degree in emergency management and homeland security. So I am very passionate about all things safety and security, which is what I just did in Fairfield. I am a firm believer of communication and transparency, and in order for all that to work, you need trust in the community. So I think safety, especially when it concerns school safety, is a shared responsibility. And by that, I mean we collaborate between the school staff, parents, students, first responders. And I understand that comprehensive approach because it's exactly what I just did in Fairfield. I think that taking a proactive rather than a reactive approach in prevention, preparedness, response planning that's your key to success. And then just getting back to communication, I'm, in the short time I've been here, really trying to elaborate and strengthen some of the processes that were in place. Joe called me up the other day about the incident that I wasn't here for yet. But again, going back to taking a layered communication approach to faculty, staff, and district leadership and the police department is critical in building trust in the community. So consistent messaging is what I always say, consistent messaging. The message from the superintendent's office and the message from the chief of police need to be consistent with each other. That has a trickle down effect to the district leadership and the principals, which then trickles down. Chain of command, it's military police things, chain of command. And I'm really going to be stressing that in my, as I move forward and working with the principals and coming up with that approach so that we're all on the same page. I believe, I'm a firm believer in professional development. I actually have a meeting on Friday with my security team. I met them all individually, but I'm meeting them all face to face in the same room. And I'm going to get kind of the climate of where they're at. I'm going to push for training for them, answer any questions, needs, concerns on their part, and that will help me gauge the culture within each individual school, because those are our frontline guys that are out there every day and deal with the day-to-day operations. It's going to kind of help me fast track my way to get me up to speed with what my goals and objectives need to be based on their input. Like I said, Fairfield was great. It was emotional to retire because I loved working there and loved the people that I worked with. But again, I'm taking my mindset from Fairfield, which is a much larger district, and basically plug and play here in Weston. I'm excited for that. Everyone in central office has been very welcoming and very supportive. And the impression I get is everyone's pretty happy that I'm here. So that's a positive morale booster for me moving forward. So yeah, I just think I'm embracing it. Lisa told me from day one, this is your spot. You're the new director. Embrace it. Take ownership of it. And I'm very good at that. Setting the reset button. Let's just call it that. Moving forward, implementing a better structure, a better mechanism of communication, and staff development. And slowly get out into the community and meet those people that have questions and concerns and be able to be the conduit between Lisa, the super, and the schools and the police department. I'm that guy, and I'm ready for that challenge because it's exactly what I just did in Fairfield. So, like I said, I plan on meeting with the teachers, the staff. This is my second week here, and I've never been to so many meetings in my life. I've already had a lot of meetings. So, yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I'm excited to move forward.
Well, we're excited to have you, and I know that we spoke briefly the other day, but I think you've already met with, like you said, you've already met with the security specialists. You've already met with the principals, I believe, as well
Yes.
of the schools. And so you're getting out there, and there are a lot of people in the community, I'm sure, that will want to, meet with you, talk to you, have a bunch of questions just about your philosophy, sort of how you manage, what is your thinking just behind, your guiding principles to promoting safety and security. So I think that's all good. I just want to thank you and say, we appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know we set up these community forums in March now. You're taking time, in your evening as well as your morning to communicate with the community. It's something I think we want to stress here as well, because, you said it before, right? Open communication, transparency, I think is table stakes for building trust with the community here. And we're hitting the reset button, and we want to make sure that, we promote that as much as possible. So I'll open it up to questions. I don't know if David or Steve have any questions, or, Joe or Dan or whomever, but welcome aboard, and we're excited to have you, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. As much as Jim, we met as part of the interview committee as well. So I think it's great that we have somebody with your experience. I think that ultimately that's what the community's been asking for. I think what you're going to find in Weston is it's a very highly engaged community, which can at times be challenging, but it's really, at the end of the day, as a parent of 2 children in the Weston schools myself, we're engaged because we have an interest in making sure that our community and our kids are in good hands. So I think I'm thrilled that you're the director of security. I think that you will do great things for us. And I think the parents, the community, are going to look forward to having somebody who really can speak to them and also understand the limitations of what we can do, whether it's budgeting, whether it's what is realistically doable. There's lots of things that are out of our area of expertise, but as parents, why can't we do this? Why don't we do that? And so you're going to be sort of, I think, a great interpreter, buffer, that person who can take the concerns of the community, understand them, and then address them. And I'm sure in many cases, it's going to be address them through action. And in other cases, going to be explaining why what we're doing is the appropriate thing to do. So I think, as I say, the honeymoon period, probably about 90 days. But it seems like Mike's already got you set up for in-person in March. Was right? So
Yes.
6 weeks. Is that right, Mike? You gave him 6 weeks?
4 weeks. 4 weeks from today is the first meeting. So, or 4 weeks from 2 days from now. Yeah, first meeting.
Yeah. I don't know anything about a honeymoon phase, because I literally retired from a 25-year career, and 4 days later started my second career here in Weston. So I'm just, I'm ready to rock and roll. It's, when I was a lieutenant in Fairfield, the chief really empowered me to run a division. So I'm not one to shy away from conversation. I was the conduit between town hall, the superintendent, the police department, and the schools and all the parents. I would go to PTA meetings and have those chats. Like I'm that guy out there. I'm not one to shy away from conversation, and keeping specific security needs close to my vest. As Joe had mentioned earlier, there's just certain things that are need to know. But I am pretty well versed in walking that line, that balancing act between transparency versus, top security mechanisms that the public shouldn't really know about.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I look forward to an opportunity to sit down and meet with you in person as well again.
Perfect. Thank you.
We're going to put you to the test, Jim, on that, on walking that line. Steve, any comments or questions?
No. I think the two of you have covered it well, Jim. I'm looking forward to meeting you. We haven't had the opportunity to meet, but your reputation precedes you.
Thank you, Steve.
You're thought very highly of by members of our members of our police department. So looking forward to meet you.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, Jim, thanks. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it. And look forward to you, of course, interacting with you over the coming weeks, and hearing what you have to say about Weston and sort of, what our security posture has been and how we can get from, better to best. So appreciate your efforts in advance.
Thank you.
Just moving on, I know we're short on time here. Just quick mention, future meeting topics. Look, as I've mentioned this before, we want to give Jim sort of a hot second here to sort of get his sea legs under him. Some of these topics, the outstanding safety and security topics that we've talked about, School Road and just shoring up some of those, playgrounds, let's say along School Road, and some of the other issues in terms of, just other outstanding, third-party assessments, etc. I think these are topics that we'll have Jim address, over the coming weeks here, and maybe, starting next meeting once he gets, like I said, his sea legs under him. Trends in safety and security, where, Jim is very plugged in, I think, to what's going on just nationally and statewide as in terms of safety and security trends. So looking forward to his updates there as well. And then finally, I know that this is budget season, the capital budget we've had, the town has been really supportive in terms of, a commitment to safety and security. I know last year we passed a capital budget that included about $330,000 towards safety and security. We are on the schedule we're in year 2 of 3 of that commitment. So another $330,000 this year as well as next year. That's in the capital budget. I think understanding some of the safety and security priorities to which that budget is going to be deployed. I think, again, we'll have Jim weigh in on that as sort of he assesses the security posture here in town. So more on that to come. Our next scheduled meeting of the Safety and Security Committee will be Tuesday, March 11th at 8:30. Not sure if anyone has any other questions or comments, but if not, we can adjourn the meeting. Anyone else? Okay. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. And we will see you next month. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Ron.
you.
Okay.